sent an email to the list about a guy who is making an algorithm to change things. I just watched the video and it was fantastic.
Ah,
So,
I see the post. I'm building an algorithm that doesn't rot your brain by Jack Conte, who is a very cool individual. Thank you. We, dearly beloved, we are gathered here in the presence of technology and bots uh, so that we might learn to ask good questions. And we have with us to guide us through the process, Victoria, uh, from not the continental US, but rather across the pond in the old world, which sometimes
yeah.
seems more modern than the new world. But hey, that's a whole other conversation. Uh, and I'm going to hand the process over to Victoria and see where we go. Por
Okay.
favor.
So we are going to use the question formulation technique that we introduced the other week. And it's based on this exercise. I based it on a metaphor because you must, I didn't know what each of you were interested in. So I thought, let's work with something you might find while you're walking in a mural in a street that resonates with you. And if something resonates with you, you are going to ask questions about it. So, so I thought that we could start by asking questions to this. Wait a minute. To this share. Okay. I'm not used to share. We are going to ask questions to this picture.
Hmm.
We will be asking questions for 10 minutes. Each of us will be writing down their questions privately, not in the chat, not in anywhere, just in a piece of paper or notes in your computer. And as we said last week, there are some rules to produce these questions. You must ask as many questions as you want, as you can for 10 minutes asking questions. Just let them flow because usually there are like the first 3 to 5 questions are very cliche and then the others go deeper. Don't stop to judge, discuss, just let your mind flow. Don't try to answer the question yet and don't worry because you are the only person looking at this question. So if there is a typo or something, we're not going to care. If something comes in the form of a statement, you should put a question mark after that to turn it to a question. So these are the rules for these first 10 minutes of our exercise.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
So
Sounds great. You'll keep the time and take us out of 10 minutes? Super. Everybody, you know your tasks. And
1 minute. Time's up. You can finish your questions if you still have them. But overall, how are you feeling? Did you manage to get at least 15 questions?
Yep, I don't think anyone had a
Yep.
problem.
I didn't. I couldn't get more than 8.
Well, it's a good number, Stacy. Don't worry. Don't worry. You're doing great.
I have 20 or
So
30.
the more the better, but sometimes we cannot do everything at the same time. I'm going to have the second part of this, if I can find where I put that. Yeah, here.
I arrived a little late. Is there a place that we're supposed to be putting the questions, or we're just supposed
No,
to have
just
it?
in a piece of paper for
Okay.
now.
Keep them
For
local for now.
now. Now you will see. Later we will be using Excalibur for sharing, but now we need to make a reflection, because the way we make our questions influences how we think about the issues raised by the question. And we are going to pay attention whether we have written close-ended questions, those who are answered yes or no, or with a short word, and open-ended questions. And the next exercise is like going through your list of questions and try to change at least 3 questions from one mode to the other. If you change more questions, that's up to you.
Victoria, what do you mean from one mode to the other?
For example, if I have an open-ended question, like where is this oasis?
Mhm.
I may change it to something that it's easier to answer, like is this oasis in a specific country? Or are we talking about a specific, because that's a yes-no question?
Mhm.
Or if that kind of thing, trying to change an open-ended question, something that requires explanation, to something that can be answered yes or no,
Mhm.
or trying to,
Or the other direction also, or do you want
yes, both directions.
Okay.
Just is an exercise to reflect on how you ask this question and if changing the question can bring more value to the answers. And we can have 5 minutes for this exercise. Okay?
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I am hearing something, but not really and I am going to stop sharing now because that's the way I can see you all now that you all have the address for the graph. It's like just jump in and go to the prioritized questions container and add your questions in a row. the link again. To navigate the scale draw, you can go with control and the mouse wheel, you make it bigger or smaller, you zoom. With the hand, you can move it. And to just type the question, you double click in one card and start typing. If I'm not mistaken, almost everybody is done. Because I'm trying to put a little bit of order here. I'm moving things around, okay? So we have all questions together. Oh, okay. Has everyone put their questions?
Speak up if you haven't had a chance to do it yet.
Okay.
Cool.
So we have now 9 per 3, that's 27 questions total. They are just 3 questions that are our own question, and the others are from other people. We can explore this by ourselves, or we can explore this as a group. It feels like as a group makes more sense. But in order to do that, we need a little bit more of context. And here is where I will be asking Jerry to reveal why we choose this metaphor and what we had in mind when we were thinking about the oasis and the memory. So we can now prioritize these questions in the context that makes sense for us. So Jerry, please.
Beautiful. Thank you. So Victoria and I were talking about what Q focus to choose for this session, and we wanted to make it relevant to OGM, and we discussed a bit of the dynamics of OGM. And at some point, I sort of said, well, OGM is kind of like an oasis where there are people who have their own projects, show up, share stories around the fire, and then go back to their projects. And kind of until recently, this oasis didn't have much of a memory. We weren't creating a memory. But then recently, like the Plex just changed hands, and John and Kevin and Scott have sort of picked it up, and we had a couple other exercises where we started to maybe practice some memory in different ways. Pete went and programmed summaries of calls that are really highly detailed and useful, and using code and wikis and so forth. And it was like, maybe these are the starting rustling points. And you all know that I've been curating all the calls into my brain, but my brain is quirky. So my curation of our shared memory is trapped in a quirky tool, and not as useful out in the commons, perhaps. I don't really know. So that's what got me pondering. And Victoria's like, I like that metaphor. Let's go with that as a Q focus.
So the exercise now is like, as a group, we can go through these questions, try to group them. For example, if there are here 2 cards that have no question, so these go out. But what are the elements of agency? Okay, that's like one category. If people and animals leave imprints on their visit, isn't that memory? That's like another category. Is it about being present, absent, or in between? Does this card have something to do with one or the other? So just take one card, think about it, try to group with the others, and don't be afraid to mess up with the order of other people, because we will find a moment where we will have like some groups that are more or less stable.
So you want us to to drag them together
Yeah,
in clusters?
like, yeah, clusters.
Mhm.
Is this the oasis? Yes, this is the oasis.
Yeah, okay.
That was easy to answer.
Okay. And Victoria, you suggested several categories. Could you just put those in the chat?
No, categories must be
Whatever. Okay. They'll emerge.
organical,
Whatever
coming
emerges.
organically
Got-
from those
gotcha.
clusters we make.
Gotcha. Okay.
I don't know what the categories are.
Gabriele, if you're still driving, I'm sorry this is such a visual exercise and such a quiet exercise. It's not so exciting for a drive along.
Do we have a general understanding?
Seems like we have clusters we've enjoyed or agreed to or something like that.
Scott's asking if the purpose of the exercise is to enlist the group brain power to help everyone choose the focus.
Not to choose the
It-
focus, to assist the people who chose the focus.
This is an exercise to get a taste of what this methodology is about. And since we had to do it with something, we felt like talking about the group and how the group is capturing the information and delivering the information might be useful, even if not everybody will be interested in the subject. But we have
So
to
in
pick some.
in a typical session, the group would have a consensus on the focus topic.
No.
Oh,
Usually,
okay.
no, usually it's, for example, the idea is the group is it's a group of people in a work environment, so they have a goal, and the facilitator knows the goal, so the facilitator, because making the Q focus, the initial prompt is not easy. For example, in a school setting, the Q focus may be the teacher that thinks, okay, how do I engage my students to ask about this specific period of time history? Or how do I engage my pupils to ask questions about climate change or something? So the Q focus is giving focus to something, because we discussed yesterday with Jerry, should we talk about curiosity? And I said, yeah, curiosity is too broad. And you must ask something like, how is curiosity going to serve this purpose? Or how we can focus curiosity on something. That's how we came with this.
Let me use your example of the teacher who wants to encourage the students to ask questions about a certain subject. How can I do that?
Uh-huh.
Are the people who are doing the questioning, are they trying to help that teacher understand it, or are they also trying to
They are
get
also trying to understand it for themselves, yeah.
Okay.
But I am assuming, or the exercise is assuming, that they have all a shared interest in the issue.
Thank you.
Thanks for that. Clarifies.
So we can look at that.
Kevin,
What
you get quite a bit of background noise. If you don't mind muting when you're not talking, Kevin. Oh, he doesn't have his earphones in. That may be why. I've taken the liberty of muting him.
Are you seeing any patterns, Jerry, that might be?
Well, there's a piece about memory that I really that like the six questions that are together on the middle right. I really like a lot about, what would change if the Oasis remembered everything? What is the relationship between memory and an understanding of past and future? How do we know the Oasis has no memory? Aren't footprints memory? Those kinds of things. I love that. That's that, and I love sort of ponderings about memory, and in particular when they're kind of creative. So this feels very juicy to me. And then just to the left of that, there was a lot about agency. Excuse me, but it felt like the word agency was coming up in several different ways here, so that it doesn't feel like there's as much consistency or resonance to that cluster. Um, and then
Can I comment on that just briefly?
please, please.
This prompt for me, I was thinking about it in terms of my own stuff. I wasn't thinking about it in terms of OGM because I didn't know yet. And
Cool.
so it doesn't hold together perhaps because I wasn't thinking it was supposed to hold together.
But I like that feature of the process. I mean, the process, the fact that the Q focus wasn't a targeted question about a thing in between, but rather more general, allowed you to take your context and just drop it in. And now we're having that conversation, which I really like. Sorry, Victoria, I probably stole your thunder there.
Yeah, I was going to say exactly the same. This is like on purpose. I didn't want to focus too much on let's talk about OGM and the ways OGM makes memory. Let's see how each of us is related to projects that have to deal with memories, because that sure brings something interesting to the table for everyone.
It's interesting that nobody seems to have gone down the path of what are good memories, bad memories, what influence do they have? Like we didn't go. I don't think any of us pursued the memory themselves. We were talking more about other aspects, but
Well, maybe, Jerry, but we each put 3 questions out of the 20 or 30 or however many that we generated.
yes, exactly. So
And
there
that was
might
a very,
there might be a bunch out there.
and that was a very fast selection with pretty unspecific criteria. So who knows?
Yep, yep, totally.
And I rolled in late, so I came in with no OGM context or nexus whatsoever. So all I had were the graphic ingredients, the statement.
Doug, we didn't have any OGM context either.
Oh, okay. So my experience of that, Victoria, which I really, really appreciate, is I'm not arriving with my rear view mirror if I'm arriving with just it, just
Yeah. Yeah.
what's given, then my emergent response is mine.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that there are emergences and consonances with others is an emergent property. It's not something that was cognitively constructed.
Mm-hmm.
That's the point, to an
Yeah.
extent, that because I could the Q focus could be more specific. We could be asking, how can we build a memory for the group? Not in this way, it must be redone, but it might be very targeted. But we thought that because this particular oasis has people that is more like in their own projects, more than thinking about leaving some footprint in the group, that would be like easier if each one of us took the piece that resonated with us, that was on purpose. But I feel like even if we are now thinking about OGM specifically, this is very useful, because here there is one question that says, what are the elements of agency? Maybe it didn't have anything to do with the group, but relates to one question I posed yesterday to Jerry. When you are a newcomer, you have no idea when you're where you are landing, what this oasis is about, how to understand the oasis. So you have no map, you have nothing, you have no agency, really, other than, okay, I met Jerry, we were like very in synchrony, and I say, okay, I will join. But I didn't know where, so it was like blindfolded. So maybe if we think about agency in this context, we can think, are we giving enough breadcrumbs for other people to join the oasis? Are we giving enough information for other people to understand where they are entering? And this may or may not produce a small project of, okay, let's document better the website so people knows where they are landing
And
or
as
what
part of
we are expecting of them.
Yeah, sorry. As part of that conversation, I explained to Victoria some of the projects we had early in OGM, including Vincent Arena's bigger database of projects and people, and a bunch of things that kind of spun out of OGM, but didn't remain here, they're not part of what we do daily. And our attempts to create some breadcrumbs, including also the incredibly primitive openglobalmind.com website, is because it uses Pete Kaminsky's massive wiki, which isn't really a wiki, which none of the rest of us are particularly using. So we're not collaboratively editing the website presence for Open Global Mind. It's just a little tiny thing that I did quickly 2.5 years ago, something like that. So we have those hindrances to making progress on this. And I love how this kind of all cooks up interesting issues. But I think that the questions showing up on the board really enrich the conversation. Go ahead, Scott. And Victoria, do you want to run the conversation or shall I? Okay. Scott, go ahead.
You are the official runner of the conversation.
Always happy to delegate.
Um, I think part of the magic of this particular call was that we didn't know, because we are a diverse bunch with a lot of tendrils out in different places. And I used to conduct brainstorming sessions, and one of the things that I would present at the beginning was the idea that if you start with a focus topic, there's a gravity to it. And as you start to get further from it, it feels less relevant and you get pulled back to the center. And if you start with something that's way out here, you can connect it to the middle. And you'll never go way out here if you start from the center, because it's this little, like, you come back and come back. And so that felt very much like what happened here, because we didn't know the subject to begin with.
Love that, Scott. Thank you. Thank you. You're reminding me that I met Ying Chen, who ran the new media department at Hong Kong University a very long time ago, way before Umbrella Movement and China basically sucking Hong Kong back into its orbit. And her department was Maverick and oh, sorry, small funny. This is a little story, but I introduced them to Wikipedia. I basically showed up and said, "Hey, there's this fabulous thing," and her lieutenant was Andrew Lee, Lih, who then went on to write a book about Wikipedia. And in the first paragraph, he says, like, "Thank you, Jerry, for introducing me to Wikipedia." He's one of the two guys who took down the guy who was going to commit suicide on stage at a recent Wikipedia meeting, a piece of news you may or may not have seen. Anyway, I'm back to Ying. Her department for the first couple years was just this weird maverick department at the university, and suddenly it started growing and getting hugely popular. And then the other departments started figuring out the game and started trying to put her in the tractor beams and mainstream her department, make her more like them. And so she cut a deal with another university on mainland China to have a large mass pulling her out of the university. And this is metaphorical all, but I loved the conversation because she was very intentionally trying to create some tension, some pull, so that she wouldn't be dragged into the vortex of similarity, of sameness with the other groups. It was a very cool conversation, and I've put that in sort of in my little bin of strategy tactics over time. Gil, can you wait for a second? I'll just go through the queue to you. Thanks. Doug, please.
I'm not sure why, but Victoria, I found this sort of, provoked for me the Danella Meadows thing, where I found myself going, is the cow eating the grass or is the grass feeding the cow? Because of the sparseness of it. And I in my questions and progression, I never got out of that sort of orientation. Yeah, I'm complete.
Thank you. Stacy.
Yeah, so Jerry, so first of all, I wanted to say that my questions aren't in there because I wasn't able to use the CalDraw, which I just wanted to share. I mean, I have some other things going on right now, so I'm kind of emotional. It almost brought me to tears.
Oh,
I
I'm
mean,
so sorry, but Stacy, why
no,
didn't you just raise your hand
no,
and
no,
say you weren't able to use it?
because that's not the point of why I'm sharing.
Okay.
I'm sharing it because I just want to like remind, like I felt like I was in school and I really felt for that kid who is like lost.
Hmm.
That's why I'm sharing it. I'm okay. I'm over it. I'm good. That being said, my questions were all about agency and memory. And so when you said I don't see any questions there, I'm like, those were
Over
mine.
here, over here.
So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Stacy. And
And yes,
somewhere
I
along the
hate
line,
technology and I can't do CalDraw. And I couldn't figure out if the name that was in there, if that was supposed to be for me. Like, do I use that name? Do I keep going? Because there was like a name when I went there. And I was like, am I supposed to erase that and put my own name in there? Like little stupid things that if I had a human being there, I would say, oh, do I just use this? And then I would move on to the next step.
makes
So
sense.
over.
Thank you. Gil at breakfast.
Yeah, it's good too. Um, I was perplexed by this process at first, and I loved it more and more as it unfolded. And I have questions and thoughts about that, but for later on that, I want to respond to what Scott said about gravitational core and periphery. But before that, Jerry, the story you just told us about China, have you written that up, or has anyone?
I've not.
I, it would be a good one to do.
Thank you.
There's something very rich in there. Um, um, so there's a magic of emergence in this process. But Scott, to your point about the beginning without a gravitational core, I don't know if that's ever possible. Because here we are, we didn't know the purpose that Jerry and Victoria had in mind, but we are a community that has spent a lot of time together over the years. So there's some gravitational core already here. If someone's in an organization or if it's a very diverse group of people in a community, there's a hint of something already there. There's a for the sake of what or why are we in a relationship or why are we talking together? One of my questions is why are all these folks at this particular oasis at this particular time? So I like the the spatial and physical tension that you're drawing, but it doesn't feel like either one or the other. They're both operating. Yeah.
Victoria, do you want
The
to
concept,
reply or think about that?
just a quick
Go ahead, Scott.
clarification.
Yeah.
So it was a way to describe why I use the associate random concepts technique. Because why would you want to pull a random word out of the dictionary and then try to connect it? Because even though this group is together, doesn't know the topic, as you said, we all know the topic at some level. Many of us have been here for years. And so our tendency will be to be satellites around, if not the topic itself, around OGM in this Thursday call. And so the associate random concepts idea was to try to intentionally get us out of the orbit and have something else to connect to. And we are all incredible connectors. So we could take some idea and it might provide us with a further reaching or more divergent set of results. That's just a little explanation of where it came from.
Thanks, Scott. Victoria, any thoughts, responses?
I think everybody got the feeling and the idea of this methodology. I usually use this not like we have done now, but to prepare topics for sessions. For example, imagine Jerry sends on Monday an email with a Q focus. And we have a Scully draw or somewhere to place our 3 main questions about this topic. Wouldn't that be more like focused once we are on the call?
I love that. I mean, one of the quirky things about OGM is that even though we send each other a lot of posts and articles on the mailing list, I don't get that much feedback from people about topics to talk about. And one of the things I've been a little bit more careful about recently was when topics arise during a call, I note them as a potential future topic. And then I try to pick from those as we move forward. And that's what happened here is Victoria said something and then I put it down as potential future topic. And then we're like, yep, and here we are. But I would love a richer process of coming up with the things we do talk about on Thursdays, and what Victoria just described sounds like a cool experiment as well. Scott.
Gil, I agree with you that this got much more interesting the more we did it. And I think the value for me was going through the process. So thank you, Victoria, for that. What I noticed, the one thing that I think was the biggest benefit out of this is I love how the no answers rule for the group muted some of the things that I tend to dislike about group conversations, which is the answers are plentiful and the questions kind of get shut down or answered. And it very quickly goes divert or convergent because everybody knows, well, the reason that is because of this. And then if we try to go back to questioning, it tends to be, no, this is what it is. Yes, if we try to go here, no, no, no. And so I enjoyed how that simple rule enabled us to stay in questioning and find deeper, better, more interesting questions. So thank you.
Thanks, Scott, and Victoria for the whole process. You're reminding me that I have a thought in my brain called asking better questions. There's a link directly to it. And I put the question formulation technique under it, but there's a whole bunch of other things. People have written books about asking better questions. Mika Sifri, a friend of OGM, who's occasionally here, had a whole project, the Good Questions Project or something like that, which should be under there. There's a bunch of people who are exploring this delightful, I find really enjoyable space of how do we ask better questions? Because all too often we're working really hard on the wrong question, or nobody actually even asked a good question. Stacy, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Victoria, because what I love about this exercise is it cannot help but to expand thinking and in a way that doesn't distract. So it's almost like a boundary around distraction, but it forces you to expand thinking. And I just love that because that's what we need in this world.
And spaces where your mind is allowed to wander are precious.
Yeah.
All too often we're so on mission and we're so, trying to complete something and deliver the deliverable that we don't make these associations well, and we don't sit and talk about them. I mean, there's a bunch of questions that came up in the clusters on the Excalibur that I'm like, oh, I'd love to sit down and talk about that. That sounds great. Scott, please.
I might have done it as an exercise, but I don't remember the last time I asked questions for 10 minutes. And you think 10 minutes, It's not even 1% of your day because 15 minutes is 1% of your day. You know,
I
like
didn't know that. Cool.
10 minute. Well, it's a good thing I can do this for 1%, right? Um, and it's just, again, I go back to Gil's comment about, I thought this 10 minutes is going to take forever. This is going to be awkward. This is going to be weird. It's going to be quiet. And it wasn't. It went quickly. And I mean, most of us got, well, we all got a lot of questions, which I think if you had asked us to write 2 questions, we would have written 2 and stopped.
It's a little bit like the story about the pottery teacher who split his class in two, and half the class he gave the assignment to take the quarter to make the best frickin' pot they could make. And he told the other half of the class, make as many pots as you can possibly make. And the story goes that the people who made the most pots made the best pots. Gil, please.
Yeah, I thought I was going to run out of questions.
Did you?
Nope.
You had the most questions, I think. I think you
They
said
just
30 or
kept they
40.
just kept coming. I like the invitation of the exercise to generate as many questions as you can without looking for answers. And some of them were fairly obvious and flowed from each other. And then they started getting random and weird and orthogonal and then interconnected. And it was just a delightful process. And I understand why we want to boil down to pick 3 each, but it would be fascinating to see the entire field of all of them from all of us.
Which
Um,
might be a very interesting exercise for AI to help us with. That's
hmm.
entirely possible because I think 40 questions times 15 participants or something would be pretty overwhelming. I think we'd have a hard time figuring our way through it. But maybe there's a way to get some assistance.
It's
I
a
will.
perfect it's a perfect task for an AI, but it'd be important to either give it or not give it clustering
Yes,
guidance.
exactly.
And I don't know which way to go.
And then I will add that one of my beefs with most group process is that I have seen so many good ideas die in a group process
Hmm.
when the facilitators go and when they ask everybody to dot vote on things, and
Hmm.
here's a bunch of dots, put the dots on your favorite post-its, and then the facilitators go and cluster them into things, and that process
Hmm.
squishes out
Hmm.
the juiciest, most outlier ideas that happened in the conversation, and whatever happens after that is always impoverished, and I regret that. And in this case, the clustering was actually quite juicy because we were all sort of doing it and it kept going. It was like, oh, no, no, no,
Yeah.
let's move this over here, let's move this over there. And I would have liked to just push that even further and take it further. And by the way, the physical artifact of the Excalidraw, this might be interesting to us. One of the really cool things about Excalidraw, which was created by Joel Vishian, who is a friend of OGM's as well, and who recently ran a really cool online conference about visual communication, which I was part of. Um, One of the interesting things about Excalidraw is that you can have a piece of text be a pointer to another Excalidraw drawing. They can nest. So, and in fact, you can include an Excalidraw drawing inside of another Excalidraw drawing. So this session, this Excalidraw could be a panel in another
Mhm.
Excalidraw that has each of our sessions, and then the sessions could call each other and be
Yeah.
connected in different interesting ways. Let me go to Victoria first, then you, Gil.
Okay.
That's how Excalidraw in Obsidian works, not excalidraw.com.
Oh, really? I did not know
Yeah.
that. So it's an Obsidian Excalidraw feature. And I meant
Yeah.
to ask you what the difference was between Excalidraw.com and Excalidraw plugin. So cool.
Excalidraw.com, it's something that, in fact, Zolt used to make the plugin, but he didn't invent the .com site. And
Oh,
Zolt's addition was to migrate that to Excalidraw, so you can make notes in Obsidian in this form, and you can have like the front part of the card is a graph, and the back part is your text in Markdown, and you can link them, and you can also make a big Excalidraw with lots of notes.
So just to finish that thought, the thing that the demo that Joel did for me maybe a year ago when I first met him was he had a diagram and you could make links to pages in an Obsidian vault, and then if you changed the name in the vault, the text would change in the diagram. So they were actually linked in a very simple, beautiful way, and that meant that your diagrams could be persistent objects connected into the conversations and all that. I really love that about the tool. Gil, briefly.
Yeah, Excalidraw is on my play more with these things in Obsidian list. It's there, but I have not exported as much as Victoria has. So looking forward to that. On the group process facilitation, dot voting, convergence thing, I was at a great workshop run by Rocky Mountain Institute years ago, where they gave enormous respect to the converge diverge rhythm in these kind of conversations. And often the group comes together, there's a common purpose, we brainstorm and diverge, and we cluster and come into some kind of conclusion. And they ran that rhythm, I think, 5 or 6 times over the course of the workshop. So we would get to a hypothesis and then diverge again. And that would be a way to enrich the way that this process did for me and Jerry, to counter the sort of premature coalescence that you're identifying as really common in groups that are more focused on answers than on questions, which is very much, the modern Western frame of let's figure this out and let's figure out what to do, when that may not be what's most important at all the time.
And let's do that as efficiently and quickly as possible. 2 words that kill off a lot of innovation and stimulation and wandering. So yeah, totally agree.
Yeah.
And we're obsessed. We're very obsessed.
Time is money, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Alex.
I just want to, I love this, by the way, and I shared what everybody said, which is, didn't know what it was all about at the start, and it was brilliant, really good. But what I felt was how I was thinking of questions in a certain mode, and actually it turns out it's like one of probably 5 or 6 modes thinking about that diagram. And I'm actually quite impressed, and I'm happy that I participated to see how people were thinking about that same thing. And I think it's very useful for us when we're discussing topics that we could perhaps do something like this before, and that's quite nice. The thing was, as soon as I saw it, and I appreciate it. Guess what? If Pete was there, is Pete here? No, he's not here. Peter and would think the same. Oh, it's a good one to write a little project about. Get all the AIs to write code to do this, and I could do this, but that's not a problem. Whether I finish it, it's another problem, but another question. But what I find interesting is you said you use the LLM something or AIs to get these ideas to coalesce them. If you go to machine learning, which is the precursor to AI or LLM, you had the concept of clustering. You could actually analyze data and produce clusters of data. So this is a bit geeky, but if you can bear with me, please do. So one of the processes of when we analyze documents is to do embedding, which is converting them from a text number system, from which we can then convert the question to a bunch of numbers, throw it against the vector, come back with a text that is closest to it, and go, etc. I can go into that more, but not now. So the point I'm making, though, is that you can cluster without understanding the meaning. So the AI can cluster without understanding the meaning just by converting numbers. And if anybody wants to know more about it, let me know. But it's quite strange that you don't have to understand using LLMs. You won't even have to ask ChatGPT. There's a process before that where you can use numbers to create the convergence chart. If anybody wants to know more, approach me separately. But I think it's a very interesting aspect of it.
Are the numbers, and this I'm going to ask a really beginner question about these things, but are the numbers you're talking about similar to the tokens that are representations of concepts that are inside of LLMs as they develop, as they train?
Okay, let me go by example, just a slightly way to explain it, right? So if you train LLMs have numbers representing things.
And Alex, can you turn off your video? Your connection is shaky
sorry,
enough that your voice is cutting in and out. And if you kill the video, your audio quality should jump up.
is it okay now?
Better. Go ahead.
Okay, right. I'm Greek and when I talk, I wave my arms and that
We will
confuses
imagine
lots of
your
people.
arm. I will wave my arms as you speak just to like compensate. Go ahead.
So, okay, so a simple example of this is the LLM has a concept in its underlying numbers. Yes, exactly. Thank you. Thank you, Jerry.
I'm trying. I'm trying.
Which is,
This
for
is like
example,
simultaneous
if you have a
interpretation,
concept
only
of,
different.
if you, for example, has in its numbers a location for king and queen, right? And then it has another location for husband and wife. And then it has another location for, I don't know, brother and sister. But what they find is there are mathematical relationships. So mathematically speaking, you can calculate the angle between the two. And what you find is the angle aspect of it is the same because there's an implied relationship between all those three things. So what you can do is actually look for all the things that have the same angle. Or you can provide one and say, what else has the same angle? And it emerges, things like that emerge. Okay, so did that make it a bit clearer? Without knowing, the LLM doesn't know king versus queen. It just knows numbers.
Perfect. Thank you.
was really
It was actually very fun to do the interpretive dance alongside what you were saying, Alex. Thank you very
Well,
much. Let's go to.
was that useful to anyone though? I don't know.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Hank.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for this exercise today. Thought it was really wonderful. I always enjoy asking questions and thinking about why sometimes open questions are better, but sometimes closed questions can serve a purpose too. But I want to go back to a few comments ago when people were talking about clustering and voting with sticky dots. And I'd like to give you some experiences we had here in Europe. Myself and a number of other people we worked with facilitated hundreds and hundreds of sessions in many different European countries and also quite a few in Japan. And when good facilitators are at work, people can generate creative questions and creative answers and promising solutions to their own problems. They can do it and they can cluster them too. But what seems to happen in almost all of our situations, when you ask them to vote, and you even ask them to vote on the creative ones, they tend not to. When the group votes, the most creative answers and solutions don't get chosen. And we've had several projects in the past when the facilitators were extremely frustrated, and they were all creative people. So we organized extra sessions where just the facilitators were there, and they combed through all the creative ideas which were not chosen by the group's participants, and they clustered them. And when they voted, it turns out that the most creative ones also weren't chosen. So we call that the creativity paradox. And I don't know if you've had similar experiences in the States, but in Western Europe, Northern Europe, and Japan, that's what we tend to find.
Fascinating. Thank you. There used to be a Wikipedia page called Dotmocracy that's apparently just vanished. I just went to look for it, but Dotmocracy was a funny term to talk about what if you ran your country along dot voting guidelines. So if you see that happening, beware. And I will add that anybody who got involved in DAOs and was using crypto tokens to vote measures up or down was effectively engaging in that kind of a world. Mr. Kelly.
Yes. So, first of all, I apologize. I had to leave home and drive to get to where I am now, which is I'm now inside a hyperbaric oxygen tank. And so I missed a critical middle of the session, but I really enjoyed the beginning, and I'm really going to watch the tape or the video, and looking forward to it. On this question of the dots, well, yeah, the dots are very. There's a lot going on there, and there's a lot that gets smushed involuntarily if they're not used carefully. Just one kind of open up the accordion to say there's some ways to do it that are that avoid the kind of problems that you're talking about. One trick, I didn't use this very often, but if we really did have people who weren't talking to each other, weren't listening to each other enough, you could say, okay, here's the priority. Here's these big dots. We made them bigger. These are significant dots, and we want you to vote with them, but we want you to vote as a team of three. So we break them up into teams of three. They'd have a couple of these big dots, and they're going to put them on stuff. Well, they had to talk a lot about, well, what does that mean? Well, what does that mean? And we left it open. We said, oh, of course, the formulations of these things may not be optimum to allow you to do that. So definitely, as you're having your conversation, if you want to say, well, we should restate this one as this. Oh, okay, let's go back and look at that as a process, and let's restate those alternatives, because now it's clear after you've had the chance to talk about them what they might mean. Didn't use that very often, but if we had a group, like I said, that really wasn't talking to each other, that was the trick we could do. And in general, the idea is, there's energy on dot voting, and the energy is, you want to be aware of that energy. You want to use that energy appropriately in a group setting, but you can vector it lots of different ways. You can say, okay, we want you to go down this list of solutions. I found it did not help to say, we used to have signature dots. We used to say, put your initials on the thing and put it on there, and that means you are available to work on that problem. People wouldn't do it.
Didn't work.
That had to happen. See, that's a sensitive thing. That's a sensitive thing. And they didn't want to put that. They didn't want to make that public in front of other people.
It's
and they wanted
fascinating
to.
how subtle all of this is.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of subtlety here. You find out if you start to try to run groups with it. So we stopped doing the signature dots, but we did do this thing where we would say, all right, we're not looking for eventually we're going to talk about what's the best solution. But in this initial phase, what we want you to do is mark the high risk ones, which is, it's sort of a surrogate for dangerous ones, or what ones make the best use of resources you already have. Yeah, that's a good one, by the way. What makes the best use of resources you already have, and what needs resources you don't have that you'd have to acquire? I don't mean just money, but I mean allies, expertise, etc. Well, and you get those dots up. Well, now that's not the end of the discussion. That's the beginning of the discussion. And you want to hear, okay, so a number of you have identified this thing as, we should go here. We should take a look at it, but it needs resources. Now we can talk about the resources that you would need to make that proposal successful. It's all, it's playing with the convergence divergence. It's using the energy that you release if you put dots in people's hands and get them to stand up and go to a board. That's definitely an energy source if it's done correctly in a group. Those are just two thoughts about that. There's many more.
Thank you, John.
Okay.
I'm looking around the room, and there's probably many more people like this, but I know that John and Hank have facilitated more group sessions around the world than most humans ever get to hear about. And I bet there's lots and lots of expertise like that in the room here, but thank you for that.
Okay.
Scott, please.
Another wonderful application of this technique. I have found that if you want to write a book or an essay, the easiest way to do it is to have a question. If you start with a statement, it doesn't go as well, I think. And for me, writing a book is having a question that you really have thought a lot about. And this seems like a great process to get to that point where you now have a key question for yourself, which then activates all kinds of things for you to notice and subconsciously think about it and sleep on it, and that sort of stuff. And I just had, I don't know, I had a couple thoughts about that. So, don't write for an audience, write to answer your question. If you're going to make an outline, make the little headings, little questions, and you'll find that the writing is more enjoyable and it will take you down pathways that you might not have expected.
Thanks, Scott. Nice advice. Stacy.
So I don't know if we figured if we got the three categories that came out of these questions. I think we did. I mean, I know for me it was like rules of engagement or agency. Then it was because I know what my questions was. It was like shared meaning and connection. And then it would be like logistics and specifics or whatever word you would use. So for me, the real importance of doing this is when I would want to move on to the next step, I would want to make sure that all three of those aspects of whatever were accounted for. And so that would be like a framework that I would want to use and make sure that they were all equally as important and woven into any steps that take place.
Thanks. Victoria, do you want to riff on that, address that?
No, I will say that that's precisely. Maybe you will want to record the three categories and say, now let's work on this one. But keep in mind, we will go over the others because sometimes it's not the same talking about one thing or the other. So maybe you need focus to go on with the logistics and then another time talk about the connections, the relationships, and other things. But the good thing is you already know the categories. You have them.
And if I can just add to that for a minute, because this is a really important point. Sometimes I believe that sometimes there's a way to weave in a piece of the social to a piece of the logistical that people aren't even thinking about. And it could be just tweaking something so tiny that there'd be no cost to it to just do something a little differently and to be able to say, oh, we hit that, like we added the salt or we added the sugar to it. So that's why I think, yes, thank you.
Love that, Stacy. Thank you. Years ago, I heard, I think somebody said this, they were explaining how sometimes the juxtaposition of unusual things improves your memory, improves your recall. So the example they gave was, imagine I'm telling you a story and I tell you that like a doctor pulls up in the driveway to do a house call. You're like, okay, good. Then imagine I say the doctor pulled up in the driveway in a psychedelic VW van, like clearly this van had been places and it was all painted up and it was really cool. And your brain starts to assemble a story right away. It's like, oh wow, maybe he was like the van driver for the electric Kool-Aid acid test, or was in the 60s in the summer of love, or maybe he was a bush pilot doctor who was like volunteering and like the juxtaposition of two odd things allows our minds to just, we love to fill stuff in. That my understanding of most of perception is we notice a couple things and our brain just fills in the rest quickly, and eliminating a lot of stuff that's actually really out there that we don't notice anymore because we'd be overwhelmed if we actually saw everything. So we're pretty close to the end of our time. I don't know, Victoria, if you want to have any concluding thoughts or afterthoughts, or if you don't like to do anything else with the exercise. But I do know that I want to thank you for suggesting this, and then for help for planning it, and then for carrying it out. This worked really, really, really well. So thank you for that a lot.
No, for me it was a pleasure. It's always like very gratifying for me to bring something to the table.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Anyone else with thoughts, reflections on the session? Wish list items?
Yeah, I just wonder, will the Excalidraw site be open so that we can consult it at other times and look at the other questions that were chosen?
Yeah, that can be now open, and you can even add questions if you want, and draw arrows from one to the other,
Yeah.
do whatever you want, because that's like a document that it's keeping alive this conversation beyond the conversation.
Super
Great
cool.
idea.
Awesome. Thank you. Scott just posted, most of perception is actually memory. We don't see the tree. We mostly recall our aggregate memory of tree. The test is to try to draw the specific tree from memory. You'll typically find it very difficult, even though you know the tree because you see it all the time. Totally. There's a famous book from way back when, Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain,
Richard
which
Van
is
Eck.
how to learn how to draw. I thought it was a woman who wrote it.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, I'll put her
I
name
jumped in
in a
with an
second.
answer. I'm sorry.
That's okay,
I
but I thought
violated
a
my
woman
own
drew. I
thing.
thought a woman drew it, and I almost had her name in my mind's eye. But there's a delightful exercise in there where, oh look, it's right there. How about Betty Edwards? Yeah, Betty Edwards. Thank you. And there's several really interesting exercises there. One of which has you like draw an ear or something like that. And we have a stereotype. We have a cartoon ear that we draw in our heads, and that's what we do when we draw an ear. And it has little to no relation to actually the drawn ear. But my favorite exercise is there's a portrait on one of the pages, and you're supposed to draw it. I don't remember if you draw it first right side up, but then you draw it upside down. And by turning the image that you're replicating upside down, you now deconstruct it into the patterns and the shadows and the lines and the relationships, rather than your stereotype of this is the ear, this is the nose, this is whatever. And your rendering of it will be a lot better, because you're abstracting away from what your brain thinks these different parts look like. Yeah, that's very funny, Scott. But try to draw a bicycle from memory, not peeking at a bike first. It's hard.
You can also
We don't
draw.
really know how a bike fits together.
You can also draw with your non-dominant hand.
Uh-huh.
And this is territory, the drawing, the physical capacity, the memory, the imagination, these are all things that can be cultivated. We have whatever we come to innately, and then with practice and training like Betty Edwards and others, we can develop these things. So you can draw things from memory if you learn how to draw things from memory, which is what a lot of artists actually do.
You have to notice. It cultivates noticing, which I am always in favor of. Thank you,
Our
Tom.
attention is very important.
Cultivating is my word of the year.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Might we explore drawing and other artistic expressions as divergent thinking tools? It sounds like a great idea. Maybe we have an OGM session where we draw for each other. That'd be kind of cool. All right. Victoria, thank you. Everybody, thank you. This has been a great session.
Yeah.
More soon.
Bye-bye.
Take care.